thanks everybody. Appreciate you letting me take the time to do this. Actually, the VP of Sales was my old position. I'm now the Vice President of the Temperature Control Division for Alliance Shippers. So I'll take this. You know, Rob asked me to put together kind of an Inter-Modal 101 type presentation, and also he did give me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about our company, so you kind of know from what angle I'm coming from. But before we start, I don't know how many Met fans are here. I'm a huge Met fan, so okay, we got that. But it was a rough series. Yeah, it was. So anyway, meet the Met.
True, that's because his shipment got lost.
Yes, because they weren't using Alliance shippers. There you go. So, anyway, okay. So what we'll do here then is, I'm going the wrong direction. Sorry, guys. There we go. So what I'm going to do is give you a brief overview about what Alliance is all about, what we do. We do more than just refrigerated. I've got a very, very short industry update, at least from our perspective, what we see happening in the transportation world. We'll discuss transportation options, how they compare to each other. We'll talk a little bit about technology and the way we use technology to, better provide information for our customers. We have a little Inter-Modal 101. We'll talk about the Inter-Modal network, the railroads, primary railroads that are involved in Inter-Modal, which I got to be very careful here. We have a railroad here, so I've got, got to make sure I include them. So, the amount of money invested that railroads are investing is it's mind-boggling, and I've got some stats on that. There's a perception that from some customers that security when moving intermodal is an issue because there's handoffs, different entities are handling the freight, and I've got some information on, very brief, on how security is handled, and then we can just kind of open it up to discussion and any questions that you may have. There you go. As far as Alliance Shippers, we're a full-service third-party logistics provider. We're divided into different segments. These are the 6 primary. We're our protective service division, and I'll give you a little bit about that as we get going. We have an international division which handles, as you can see, NBO, freight forwarding, and customs clearance. And please, no international questions because I am not an international guy. So, direct shippers, we have an operation where we handle less than truckload shipments that originate in the Northeast. We have a facility in Keesby, New Jersey, which is just kind of across from Staten Island. And we handle nationwide distribution of LTL through that facility. Selective distribution, we do warehousing, distribution, and consolidation. We do not own any warehouses. We'll contract, and then we'll operate that way. We have a highway services division, which is technically on paper a brokerage, but it's not, a pile of guys in the room dialing for diesels. We have partnerships with a group of core carriers, and we manage over-the-road transportation. With major companies, for example, we have a major shipper that ships 90 loads a week from the Kansas market into Pennsylvania. And the advantage that we bring is we'll put a dedicated program together for that carrier by combining another customer's freight and be able to keep that carrier moving. So it works very well. And then last, we have a rail car services. We do the distribution of beer that's produced in St. John, New Brunswick for Moosehead into the United States. We haul boxcars of, it used to be in the old days, a driver could have the fake log under his seat and he'd pull it out. Oh, I've only been driving for 4 hours when indeed he's been driving for 12. So this will eliminate that.
So if you didn't know, e-logging cleared OMB last Friday.
Okay.
So it should get published in December, so it'll be 17.
Okay, so that's where our highway
2-year publication.
Right. So that's why my highway guy told me 17. I'm sure. So there are presently about it's estimated that 40% of the trucking companies out there are using electronic logs already, and feedback from those companies show that the use of electronic logs has actually reduced the amount of miles drivers are driving by about 6%. So you can see that's a pretty significant impact when you compound that over thousands and thousands and thousands of drivers.
Have they seen fewer accidents along with that, do you know?
I don't have those statistics. I couldn't answer that. I don't know that.
Since these regulations, there's been a lower pool of the drivers available?
Yes, and it's for different reasons too. I mean, these rules have a lot to do with it. We'll show driver shortages in the next slide and some of the reasons for that, that we see. So, but coming up, we have these other regulations where, yes, certain states are requiring speed limiters on tractors, and emission standards have changed. California, the California Air Resource Board has published some very, very aggressive emission laws and standards that are requiring carriers to spend a significant amount of money to keep their equipment, quote unquote, CARB compliant. We just bought 200 new trailers, and the last trailers we bought cost, all in with reefers on them and everything, about $54,000. And the new ones are $60,000 because we've got what's called a Tier 4 final engine, which is a CARB compliant engine for the state of California, and it's CARB compliant. They call it a forever engine. So, but carriers, we've had to replace. We had equipment. We had to replace engines because when the rule originally came out, you couldn't have an engine in a refrigeration unit that was older than 7 years. So, and 7 years is getting towards the end of the life of our trailers, but we ended up on 400 trailers spending about $6,000 a piece to put new engines in them so we could continue to run them.
How much is a truck? You said a trailer is $54,000.
They can be anywhere depending on what you buy. I mean, there are $100,000 trucks, and then it just depends.
And are you talking about the cab itself?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can go anywhere with that.
It's like cars. You can buy a cheap car or an expensive car, but you're talking $100,000 for a decent tractor. I mean, they're really expensive.
So the trailer itself is $60,000, just a trailer?
With a refrigerated trailer. Refrigerated trailer with a reefer, they cost us $60,000. And we just bought the 200. We bought 100 from Hyundai, and about 50% of our fleet today is Hyundai trailers, and we bought the other 100 from a company, CIMC, which is a Chinese manufacturer. We've had Wabashes, and we've had Utilities, and we've had Great Danes, and this is horrible to say, but the quality of these foreign boxes is significantly superior. We had on one of the U.S. manufacturers, nose rails were just being pulled off from the weight of the reefer. We ended up suing one of them over that. The other one didn't honor our spec with the distance between the side posts and the wall, and we were having troubles with the walls buckling, and we were having troubles with actual the ability to hold cold, hold temperature. So it's one of these. We love to buy American, but
Did not buy American. Did the fees for international drayage come into as a factor?
No, that whole. I think you're talking about the government taxation on imported containers. That's only on dry containers. It was only on dry, and I don't even know if that actually finally went through because it was a company, Stoughton, and actually tried to sue CIMC because they were bringing containers into the States at a significantly reduced price because the government was, subsidizing the Chinese government. So our government then put a tariff on dry containers, but that had nothing to do with refrigerated trailers or containers. So because that was our concern too at first. But when we buy the containers, it's funny. Or trailers, I should say. We don't buy containers. The CIMC trailers, the components are shipped over. The sides, the top, just the box. And then the chassis is built in the United States, and then they assemble the box over the chassis of the parts that were sent from China. Now Hyundai manufactures the entire unit in Tijuana, Mexico. And the advantage they offer us there is we have our primary facility is in Rialto, California, which is Southern California. They just deliver them to our yard. I was down there once with our ops manager, and 50 Alliance trailers, brand spanking new, not a mark on them, pulled in. They were gorgeous,
Well, they take advantage by assembling in Tijuana.
Correct.
Final assembly, so now it's NAFTA ruling.
Exactly.
They don't have the import taxes.
That is correct. And we actually buy them from Hyundai, which is their U.S. headquarters is in Los Angeles. So we're buying them from Hyundai USA. They're manufactured in Tijuana.
And how long these trailers last you? About 7 years, that's it? Reefers?
We keep a lot of our trailers longer than that, but we'll take the older ones and put them in some dedicated operations running short haul and things like that, and we keep the new ones moving in our primary network. But it's 7 years. I mean, they're still fine. What happens with a refrigerated trailer is, we've actually, well, not to digress to what we do. We're 100% carrier refrigeration. We have no thermal things. We have an unbelievably wonderful relationship with Carrier, and we've actually sent trailers, different aged trailers, to Carrier, who has a test facility to be able to determine how well the refrigeration, how well the insulation is holding up, how well it holds temp. And what we have found is that after it actually ended up being after 9 years. The insulation degrades to the point that you can actually see a difference in the refrigeration unit's ability to hold temp. Now that doesn't mean that the freight has any issue. It means that the refrigeration unit has to just perform or work that much harder to keep that product at temp. So we've got all these studies that show, where on a timeline that begins to happen. We actually, we just took 200 trailers and took the reefers off of them, plugged the nose, and we were running expedited intermodal for retailers in them right now. So and that's not part of the 1900. They're kind of our separate fleet.
Are you starting to monitor temperature and humidity for FSMA?
We do not measure humidity. We measure temperature regularly. I mean, we have, and again, some of the technology that we have telematics on every trailer that we have two-way communication between the trailer and our operations center. So we get, I always hate to use the word alarms because they sound negative. But you
get polling.
Right, and our operation team has the ability to make adjustments to the temperature to make sure everything is exactly where it should be. Because some of those food safety laws, they really haven't hit transportation yet. They've had discussions about, well, it's the ability to hold the proper temperature while you're holding freight. What commodities will your fleet haul other than food? We're 100% food. We're a food grade carrier. We don't haul any chemicals or anything like that. I mean, there are refrigerated carriers that handle chemicals, so yes, we monitor temperature, but humidity is not monitored to this point in the units.
Expect to see regulations
we
by
do
18.
Yep.
For we're back tracing for SFNA.
And back to Carrier, and again, not to digress this into what we do, Carrier, the satellite setup that we have is a company called Star Trek. It's a standalone product. Carrier is now, it's going to be like OnStar in a GM car. You're going to get a Carrier unit that's going to have that technology built directly into the unit, not a bolt-on. And they are talking about having sensors in. They'll have sensors in the trailer because they're owned by United Technologies. So they'll have sensors in the trailers that will measure humidity, a better job of measuring temperature than they do today. Our trailers today, and probably every refrigerated trailer out there, measures supply air and return air. And the way a refrigerated trailer works is, the units in the front, there's chutes. We have two side chutes that come down the side of the trailer, and they end at about the 3/4 mark of the trailer. So the air comes out and cycles around and under the freight. So you get this movement of air like this in a trailer. So we measure supply air versus return air, and then the micro in the unit balances that to keep, if we have a temperature set at 55 degrees, it knows what those two numbers need to be. But the newer units, they're talking about sensors throughout the trailer so we can get a real solid, this is, in the middle of the trailer, this is what the temperature is, the rear, this is the temperature, and then the unit would react accordingly to keep it where it needs to be. The last thing on the drivers is they're increasing drug testing procedures and the sleep apnea testing, which is awesome because you don't want drivers on the road that have these issues.
Walmart.
Yeah. Big customer, we can't talk about
No, that was the
Yeah, that's exactly
accident
right.
on the turnpike with
Well,
Tracy Morgan.
Exactly right. But there are a group of drivers out there that will no longer be qualified to drive, which again pulls from the driver pool that's out there. So we go to the next slide, please. Driver shortages. It's estimated that the mid 2016 will be 48,000 drivers short for the requirement. Now those numbers are, we've been hearing, as a carrier, you hear these driver shortages, and we're like, yeah, driver shortages, because then the market will change, and seller market versus a buyer market, But anyway, but this is masked by recession. Our economy really is not doing what was anticipated. Yeah.
Also, in the regulations to have like three, the one that states to have the feds putting out legislation to have three trails together. Like,
I know that is there is something in Congress to have that, but I'm not sure where that is.
I think that's
And actually, the rail industry is against it, obviously, because the longer a truck can move down the road, the more economical it becomes versus a train.
and I just got a quick about the temperature excursion.
Sure.
What happens when an excursion does occur?
Well, our procedures are, one, we're measuring. So hypothetically, the way, this is going to sound horrible, the way it used to work prior to that technology, the telematics technology, we would have a trailer in New Jersey, we put it on the train, and it would go. We didn't have a satellite, we didn't have anything. So you almost had to just kind of cross your fingers and say, geez, I hope that unit doesn't fail. And when it gets to Chicago or to California, it's still working. Now with that technology, we are measuring and monitoring it the whole way. There are, for example, between Chicago and Southern California, points where you can have a mechanic waiting for a train to actually repair or see what's going on. But our procedures are, if we get a failure, so if we're hauling a refrigerated load, and let's say we find out that the unit was down for 4 hours, whatever the time is, we'll contact the customer in advance and say, listen, our unit was down for 4 hours, and thank goodness, that does not happen very often. But we'll tell the customer that so they can inspect that product, that food product, because that's what we're hauling, to make sure that it is acceptable when it gets there. Now, one thing you have to realize about a refrigerated trailer is it's an igloo cooler with a reefer on the front. So it's not meant to change the temperature of freight. We have disagreements with frozen food shippers. They store their product at -1 degree in their freezer. The lowest setting on a refrigeration unit is -20. So they put it in our trailer, set it to the lowest, we want to make sure. Well, my unit, or our unit, is going to, it's like getting in your car and flooring it and never taking your foot off the gas, because it's trying to pull -20, and they're not designed to do that. So we constantly go back to customers and say, listen, if you put your freight in at -1, and my refrigeration unit performs as it should, you'll have no problem. If you put it in at -20 and my refrigeration unit performs, you'll have no problems. But if my refrigeration unit has any issue, either way, there's a problem. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, stressing it out.
We're exactly right. So, but you'd be surprised. Most frozen shippers want to set that unit at -20 no matter what their freight is stored at. And we've had success with some customers where we've been able to show, the perfect example is Gorton's frozen seafood. They store at -10. They were always running our units at -20. So we actually did tests to show them, we ran some test loads running at -20, -10. When it got to the destination, they had their quality people there, they checked everything, and they realized, you're right, as long as it keeps it -10, that's what we store it at, we're fine, and we're able to convert those folks to -10.
I had a quick question. Do you share the telematics information with specific customers on their loads?
We do have some
In
customers
real
that
time?
see it.
In real time?
In real time, yes. Yeah, we have we actually, and it's in our industry, but what we do is we actually have different ways for customers to see the data. It can be force-fed to as many people as you want. To different people can see different lanes, for example, different times of the day, and depending upon what data you want to see, we'll actually show temperature data if you want to see that. But the biggest thing, most customers don't do that, but what happens is if a load gets to a location and there's any question, look, our product doesn't look right here, something's wrong. we can send them a download of that unit immediately to show the performance of the refrigeration unit. We handle a lot of produce, and we get into disagreements with produce shippers because they will get product in and it's not to their quality. So they say, we're refusing the load, the lettuce was warm. So then we run a download and we say, well, wait a minute, our refrigeration unit performed exactly as it should have performed. We're not honoring the claim on this. But they're so afraid to go back to shippers and go to the shipper that actually probably in that case put poor product on the trailer. So, the railroads now have 2 years to install this positive train control. 3 years?
3.
Okay. And as this gentleman just said, it will eliminate an engineer falling asleep and the train going bonkers. I mean, it's funny, they have today, I mean, and again, I'm sure you guys could talk more about it. An engineer, if he lets go of the throttle, the train shuts down, slows down, and stops. So, there are safety systems in place today. So if a driver falls asleep and the train's going to stop. Now, if he falls asleep and he leans into it, and he's going to run it off the track.
It'll still stop.
It will still stop?
It'll still stop. Yeah, there's call it a whisker, but basically what it is a device that if he hasn't made any adjustments to the train over a period of time, so if he falls asleep and the train's running, if he hasn't made any adjustments or reset the alarm, the trains will shut off.
Right.
So there are already fail-safes in the cab, have been for many years.
Right. But positive train control really eliminates, I guess it's monitors throughout the entire track, monitoring the speed of the train, actually controlling the train, basically. Again,
it will assume control of the train if the driver isn't responding properly.
Okay.
It only applies in certain areas. It is not 100% of the track.
Right.
When they created the mandate, the technology in order to be able to implement it did not exist. So in the time between when the mandate was created and now, the technology had to be completely developed. And one of the major hurdles that the railroads ran into was one that the government created itself. The technology needs to have bandwidth on the airwaves. So in order to communicate between the unit and base stations or units and satellites and stuff, the FTC had to grant them bandwidth, and they didn't do that. And so they weren't able to complete the development of the technology in the timeline that was laid out. It is a multi-billion-dollar investment on each of the railroads.
Right.
More than $1 billion on each of the railroads. They have made significant progress on it, and eventually we will get there. But the reality was that it was a theoretical requirement at the time that it was mandated.
Can you say what percent of the track CP owns has PTC on it?
What percentage of it has PTC today is only a very small portion of it. Because of the bandwidth requirements and being able to do, in order to activate the system, we not only have to have it working, but we have to have it certified by government personnel.
Right.
And that certification process is still being developed. And personnel to do the certification process are not hired yet. And the deadline was to be 12/31 of this year. That applied specifically to any route that carried TIH, PIH, so toxic inhalation hazards and poison inhalation hazards, the highest hazard materials that you can move, or passenger service. And those routes represent a very large percentage of the routes that the railroads run. And in order to comply with that deadline, the railroads were going to be faced with a catch-22. They could either violate the PTC mandate, or they could violate their common carrier requirement, which is that they must carry these hazardous materials. So they couldn't do both, and we're going to have to shut down approximately Thanksgiving in order to clear the lines of all of those materials in order to be compliant on 12/31. So that they extended the deadline, prevented a shutdown of most of industrial North America, and protected your safe water supply and your passenger train service, etc. That will continue until they are able to implement. But they are making an enormous investment in it, and there's a lot of progress. It's been a big initiative, and it's not something that they've ignored. Many of the railroads had actually looked at this many years ago. Prior to working for Canadian Pacific, I used to work for the Burlington Northern, and fresh out of college, which was a few years ago. At that point, they were doing testing on similar technology for their locomotives to be able to do to remotely shut down locomotives or to be able to remotely monitor or control the locomotive, and that was in the late 1980s. It's come a long way, and it will get there, but the extension was necessary.
So once you wrap it up in a couple minutes, if there's any additional questions, why don't we take care of them after the presentation, that's okay?
That's fine.
Appreciate it.
So BN, just so you know, 2015 is investing $6 billion in their infrastructure. So all railroads are spending a tremendous amount of money improving on their infrastructure. We'll go kind of quick here. These are just some of the things that the BNSF has done. Again, I also, by the way, have a pile of thumb drives with this presentation on it that I'll just leave. If you'd like to grab them, please feel free. I'll leave them on the table. So we can go kind of quick. And if you have any questions, I'll leave my card, and I'm sure either one of us would answer any questions you would like to ask. So next slide. Security, real quick. You know, there's a perception all the handoffs with Inter-Modal, a driver picks up the trailer, he drives the rail yard, he gives it to the railroad, runs on the railroad, they give it to the driver. How are we measuring and monitoring security? Well, you know, a bill of lading, we have the seal number logged on it. Next slide, please. You know, when it in-gates at the railroad, every single railroad checks the seal, checks the paperwork, makes sure it matches. Then it gets in-gated. You can't get your trailer in-gated if there's a seal infraction until it's resolved. So you can't even get it on the rail. So it goes into the rail, it gets monitored. Now it's out-gating from the destination yard. As it's pulling off, they check it again. So if something happened while in the possession of the railroad, you would see a seal infraction. It would need to be resolved before they'll even let it out of the yard. And then the driver, when he delivers it, obviously, this customer is going to look at the seal number and make sure everything's okay. Every trailer and container going in and out of a rail yard is video scanned. Next slide. So they're looking for holes in the trailer, any evidence of somebody trying to break into the trailer. We have, if you go back real quick, you know, we have people that do nothing all day but monitor these photographs of every trailer we bring in and out of the railroad. For our case, not so much for security, because the railroad is going to advise us if there's a security issue. But we're looking for damages on our unit. So if we in-gate a trailer to the BNSF, let's say, and we get the in-gate scan and it looks perfect, and then we're out-gating and there's a hole in the corner, well, wait a minute, we go back to the BNSF and we get resolution that way. And if it's a hole or a problem that looks like it might have affected freight, we would notify our customer again that, hey, listen, there's something happened to this trailer, please evaluate your product, make sure it's okay. On high-value products, bolt seals are put on a trailer when it comes into the rail yard. So even though there's a seal, and you've all seen the seals, they're either those aluminum seals that you can wiggle till they break, or they're plastic seals you can cut. They'll put a bolt seal on high-value product, and we will advise them of those products. So now it gets in the yard, bolt seal. The only way you're going to get that off is with a set of bolt cutters. So when it gets to the destination ramp, as it's out-gating, okay, seals all match, everything's good. Cut the bolt seal and let it go for delivery. The railroads, their police are not like mall security guards. They're an actual police force. In the United States, they're actually federal agents. They have the ability to cross lines, and they're a highly trained. We had a situation, and I'll make it quick, where we were having fuel stolen out of our reefer at a CSX ramp. And we have one of the warnings, we get a rapid fuel loss warning from the satellite. So if we lose so many gallons in so many minutes, we know you either have a terrible leak or someone's stealing our fuel. So we advised the railroad of this, and they set up this like massive sting where they had our trailer parked in one section of the yard, and it happened 3 times on a Monday morning at 3 in the morning. So, you know, probably pretty simple, I guess.
Yeah.
But boy, and they had video of these, they were charging the guy, stealing the fuel, throwing them to the ground, putting them in cuffs. I think they tased the guy. I mean, it was pretty impressive. They had video of that. Yeah, we found them. They're done. And just so you know, our reefers, we use what's called red dye fuel. So what would happen is a truck driver, you know, when fuel prices were through the roof, they've come down significantly this year. You know, they were siphoning out of our refrigerated tank, because it's diesel fuel, into their tank, you know, so they didn't have to buy fuel for their tractor. And now that they've got red dye fuel, they've got a whole IRS issue, and they're going to jail over that, because you can't have red dye or non-taxed diesel fuel, non-highway taxed diesel fuel in a tractor.
And that dye's permanent.
And the dye, yeah, you dip it, you know if it's in there. So, all right, next slide, we'll go. Some misconceptions: Inter-Modal is the slow boat to China. I mean, we've heard customers, oh, we tried Inter-Modal 5 years ago. Hey, you know, the service is horrible. So be the next slide. You know, Expedited performs as well as any truck on the road today. So, you know, when we're talking to them about refrigerated Inter-Modal using Expedited trains, you know, we're selling what we believe is a very, very, very high quality product.
It's from China.
Slow boat from China?
From
We
China.
don't ship anything to China.
Oh, there you go. Good one.
Escalates.
Intermodal
Now you
transportation.
gotta fix all those thumb drives.
Leave the thumb drives. Intermodal transportation causes a lot of damage. If you go to the next slide. Our industry claimed ratio is below 1% as an industry. You know, when you think of lifting trailers and putting them on trains, a lot of customers have concerns about that. Every time we've brought a customer to a ramp to give them a tour and actually show them how that operates, they're absolutely amazed at how well and how easily these trailers and or containers are put on a flat car with minimal or no damage based on the way the crane operator is working. So, you know, greater risk of being stolen, and the next slide is the railroad police. Our trailers having the satellites, we get door open, door closed messages. If someone cuts a hole in the side of the trailer, we're gonna get a rapid change in the performance of the refrigeration unit. We're gonna be able to see all that. And that's it. I tried to rush at the end, so hopefully I didn't. Good.